probably the first thing they ask me is, what are you doing about the credit card fees? They're known as interchange fees or swipe fees. I like to call them swipe fees because there's some swiping involved in this 2 ways. For those who may not be familiar, swipe fees are fees deducted every time you swipe your credit card. And those fees go back to the bank that issued the card primarily. Because Visa and MasterCard control so much of the credit card market, around 80%, they're able to set these fees on a take it or leave it basis. They say to these restaurants, you don't want to pay the swipe fee every time somebody uses a piece of plastic, then don't use Visa and MasterCard. Imagine trying to survive in an economic environment like that. There's no negotiation or competition. Merchants have no choice but to accept the outrageous fees, which are set around 3%. So what does that mean? You go into one of these great restaurants represented by the men and women behind me and pay $20 for your meal. 40 to 60 cents goes to the bank that issued the credit card. You don't know that as a customer, but the retailers know it, the restaurateurs know it. It may not sound like much, but it sure adds up. It's estimated that businesses paid more than $100 billion in swipe fees on Visa and MasterCard branded cards in 2023 alone. In fact, swipe fees are restaurants' third highest cost after labor and food. Senator Marshall and I introduced the Credit Card Competition Act, which would introduce competition and choice to the credit card market and bring down these excessive fees. This bipartisan bill would require only the largest 30 banks in our country to enable at least 2 credit card networks to be used on their credit cards. Let me say, we try to translate that into English. What it means is this only applies to the 30 largest banks in America. They have dramatic bottom line, as you can imagine. And secondly, it says to the retailers behind me, there's going to be competition for your business now with these credit cards. It isn't a take it or leave it situation. Merchants would then get to choose one of these networks to use to process a transaction, and we believe something outrageous like competition may emerge. This competition and choice between networks would drive down fees to the tune of estimated $15 billion a year. If you say it's impossible, I want to tell you 10 years ago that's what they told me with debit cards. We changed the law. I mean, it's being a savings to retailers for people who use debit cards. Now we need to do the same thing with credit cards from a different approach. Visa, MasterCard, and their big bank buddies have committed to, quote, spend whatever is needed to ensure that our bill fails. But I've stood up to the big banks before. It's a lonely undertaking sometimes, but I'm not afraid of them. It shouldn't be. I look forward to working with the retailers across America who are demanding basic economic justice. Now I'm going to pass the microphone. Roger's still not here. Oh, he is here. No. Welcome, Roger. I may dart out of here to be sworn at, but now, Roger, take it away.
Hi, Dick. Thank you. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored to be here with Senator Durbin and also some folks from the NRA, the other NRA, the National Restaurant Association, and appreciate their support for being here as well, especially my Kansans that are here today as well. Look, Americans have witnessed a crescendo and explosion of credit card debt, and with this has been a crescendo of support for our bill, the Credit Card Competition Act. It's important to point out in a world with nearly 20% cumulative inflation over the last 3 years, exorbitant swipe fees are an inflation multiplier. These swipe fees are inflation multipliers, and again, I think leading to more and more cries from folks back home looking for relief. At the end of 2023, credit card debt in America passed $1 trillion for the first time. $1 trillion of credit card debt. Average interest rate, Dick, is 28%. 28% of interest on credit cards, which is highway robbery back home. If a bank charged 28% on any type of loan, a personal loan, you'd have to get it severely looked at. Lest you feel sorry for Visa and MasterCard, they have a 50% profit margin. 50% profit margin. Visa, the most profitable company in margin of profit in the country, and MasterCard's right behind them. Credit card companies 2023 profit margin: Visa 54%, MasterCard 45%, unless you feel sorry for the 4 banks that control, again, about 85% of the market. They're doing just fine as well. One of the banks reporting 33% margin, another one 17% as well. Look, Americans pay the highest swipe fees in the world, 7 times what our friends in the EU spend, 5 times the same credit card, American credit card, charging 5 times more for Americans than Chinese, 2 to 3 times more than our Canadian friends. And who bears the brunt of this is small business owners across the nation. They endure these outrageous costs in their credit card swipe fees every year, that in many cases is their 2nd or 3rd highest cost after labor and the goods they buy. I am again proud to have 3 business leaders here from Kansas who are going to share their stories. But I just want to emphasize many small businesses back home, many have told me they pay more for swipe fees than utilities, than for rent or for employee health care. So think about this. You're paying a credit card company for a very simple transaction more than you're paying for utilities, more than rent. And the other big complaint I get from small businesses is the lack of transparency. They basically get bills from MasterCard and Visa and say, here, pay it. And there's no rhyme or reason to the bill that they're getting. Look, I'm always going to pick Main Street over Wall Street. I'm always going to pick small businesses and people that carry their lunch pail to work over Wall Street businesses. The credit card market is broken. Visa and MasterCard have a duopoly over purchasing power. Our legislation would make Visa and MasterCard have to compete. How about that? Something American have to compete, and the result would be lower fees and savings for Americans. Competition is the heartbeat of capitalism. Competition is the heartbeat of capitalism, and competition is always a good thing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roger.
You bet.
I'm going to go out of order here because I have to leave, and I want to thank all of the restaurateurs who are here. But I want to call up next Dan Raskin, who owns the best deli in Chicago.
The best.
And I will tell you that I am a frequent customer and proud to be. There isn't a respectful politician in that town who doesn't hope that he dies and gets buried at Manny's because of all the great food that they serve. 88 years in business, Manny's Delicatessen. You'll find Axelrod there almost every other day, and he even brought Barack Obama in when he was candidate for president. Danny?
Thank you, sir. Hello, my name is Dan Raskin, and I'm the 4th generation owner operator of Manny's Cafeteria and Delicatessen in Chicago. A typical restaurant operates on a tight 3 to 5% pre-tax profit margin. It's a business of pennies. Most restaurants like mine are small businesses. We are a single location, and some of our employees have been with us for over 50 years. But small businesses like mine simply don't have the market power to challenge the big credit card companies and are left paying some of the highest swipe fees around the world. This is money that would be better reinvested in our business or in our communities. The Credit Card Competition Act is a bipartisan legislation that would drive down the high swipe fees paid on credit card transactions by creating competition in the broken credit card and credit card processing market. If passed, the act would lower swipe fees, improve credit card security and services, and save the U.S. businesses, including restaurants and consumers, an estimated $15 billion a year. This is something our restaurants all over our country needs. We are grateful to our hometown state, Senator Durbin and Senator Marshall, for the leadership on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Corned beef is fantastic. Kevin Vaughan, owner of Vaughan Hospitality Group.
Thank you, Senator Durbin and Senator Marshall, for sponsoring this critical bill. I own 5 restaurants in the city of Chicago with over 250 employees. We paid $395,000 in credit card fees in 2023. That's compared to $248,000 in 2019. So that's an increase of almost 50%. It's our 3rd largest operating expense after product and labor, and it exceeds gas, electric, garbage pickup, and advertising combined for all those 4 items. It keeps going up, and we've almost zero control over it due to the duopoly of the 2 companies. We're subject to very onerous rules on tap and Apple Pay transactions and chargebacks. It is absolutely time to bring more competition to credit card swipe fees. What is more American than competition? This will not only help small businesses, but will also help the consumer. Thank you.
Now we get to the Kansas retailers. You want to introduce?
Sure.
First name is a challenge.
Which one are we going to go to?
Janz.
Yeah, so next is Janz Lamek, who's the owner of Talk of the Town in Leawood, Kansas, and the Bullpen, Overland Park, Kansas. Again, world champion Kansas City Chiefs, not too far away from us.
Thank you, Senator.
You bet.
My name's Janz Lamek. I've been in the industry for 17 years, owned a restaurant in Overland Park, Kansas called Talk of the Town. And then I also opened one up in Leawood, Kansas. And then I also have the Bullpen. I employ roughly 80 employees. And swipe fees are my fourth largest expense in the industry. My utilities are cheaper than the swipe fees. The maintenance on my buildings are cheaper than the swipe fees. And over the years, this has increased. With less cash transactions, we are paying more and more to the credit card companies. We also have seen an increase just in the fees over the years as well from the credit card companies. We believe that competition injected into this industry will help lower these fees. And this is something that would save my business money that I can invest in my employees, in the community, perhaps open another restaurant or hire more employees. So I want to thank Senator Durbin and Senator Marshall for sponsoring this bill, and we hope it will get passed. Thank you.
Jennifer Ray, from the owner of the Monarch in Wichita, Kansas.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jennifer Ray, and I own the Monarch in Wichita, Kansas. I too am a single restaurant owner-operator, and I cannot emphasize enough how appreciative we are for the senators and the work that they're doing on this bill. Credit card charges are my third largest expense. They are higher than the rent that I pay on my building, and are they're quite prohibitive when it comes to me growing my business and to be able to take care of my employees and take care of my community. At this point, we are no longer a society that uses a lot of cash, and credit cards are such an amazing convenience that they are almost like a utility at this point. The problem is that they are an unregulated and unfair utility. All we are asking for is a little bit of competition in that space to make sure that we are being treated fairly and that we are being given the best deal possible to help us grow our economies. So thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. So we'll take a couple questions before we hit.
Dick, before we open up questions, can I ask Jennifer a question? Come back up here, Jennifer. So I think one of the big misconceptions is that you're going to pocket this money if MasterCard and Visa lower their charges, and you have so much competition that what would you do if those credit card fees go down?
Oh, that's a pie in the sky.
Right.
I mean, where do you start? That allows me the opportunity to hire more people, to reinvest in my property, make upgrades, and give back to our community. Wichita is a very small town, and we love taking care of each other. So the ability to have extra resources to invest back in our city would be wonderful.
Would you be able to charge a little less for one of your specialties if you didn't have this 3 or 4% hit?
Absolutely. When I first opened my restaurant 12 years ago, the credit card surcharge was not something that I factored into the price of a meal.
Right.
Now that has to be, you think about your cost of goods, but you also have to think of the price to have somebody pay for that. And to be able to take that out and reduce that, I would be able to pass that on to my customers.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Dick.
Questions?
Senator, can you guys talk about your strategy for maybe one day getting a vote on this? It's been very hard because
Well, here's the story.
other side has a lot of powerful
Oh
votes
yeah,
as
and,
well.
and the banks have sworn that they're going to stop us no matter what. But Roger on the Republican side, myself on the Democratic side, waiting for that opportunity. I can't tell you what it's going to be. It could pop up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 3 months. We don't know. But this is an issue that is ready to be considered on the floor. Strong feelings for it, and I think that we can pass it if we call it on the Senate.
I think the other point that I'm going to make, if you're not going to ask the question about it, is this emphasis that Senator Durbin mentioned that only 30-some financial institutions will be impacted by this. If the value of their bank is less than $100 billion, they're immune from this particular scenario. I think it's an opportunity for small banks to issue more credit cards as well. I think the other big issue that we might as well talk about are rewards. Look, I think that the rewards will still be there at the end of the day, that banks use these reward systems to get people into their system. So they're going to still keep competing with each other and still give those rewards out there. And most of the reward cards are more function upon the retailer themselves, whether it's a convenience store or a Cabela's or a Bass Pro, which I happen to like as well. They want my business. They want me coming into those particular stores. I think there'll be an increased opportunity for the smaller size banks as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. Yeah.